The Supreme Court will allow a lawsuit to go forward against the maker of a rifle used in the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. The lawsuit was first filed in December 2014. The case was brought by a survivor and relatives of the victims. A shooter killed 20 children and 6 adults at the Connecticut Elementary School in 2012. Joining me from Washington is Brent Kendall. He's a legal affairs reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Thank you so much for being with us, Brent. The maker of the rifle is the company Remington Arms. Did the court say why it was rejecting their appeal?
The court did not give a reason why. Typically, when the court just says, you know what, we're not going to hear a case, they don't explain individual justices' votes or give any reasoning. It's just a short, brief written order that says we're going to turn away this appeal. And so, that's what happened today. I mean, we can infer, perhaps why the court stayed out of it, but it did not offer any explanation.
Well, what was Remington's argument in its appeal?
Well, this dates back to Congress in 2005 passed protections for the gun industry that was supposed to filter out a lot of these lawsuits, and the industry argued that this litigation caused crippling legal fees, and a lot of it was nuisance litigation in which people were suing just because they sold guns that were eventually used in crimes. And so Congress passed this law and said a lot of these suits can't go forward now. However, they left an exception in place, several exceptions, and the one at the center of this case dealt with situations in which a gun maker knowingly violated a state law that applies to the sale of guns, then that sort of case could still go forward. And the Sandy Hook families argued that that's in fact what Remington did here. Yeah,
well, just elaborate on that. So what legal argument is at the center of the Connecticut case?
So the case has been narrowed somewhat, and where we are now, it's basically an advertising claim. Mm-hmm. So Connecticut, like many states, has consumer protection laws that broadly target misleading or unscrupulous or otherwise unfair advertising. And so what the families say here is that, this rifle used in the shooting, is a semi-automatic weapon that's appropriate for combat, and that what Remington did in its promotional materials was basically market, combat-style situations to your average civilian, who wanted to take sort of offensive, aggressive actions against their enemies. And so they say, it's this kind of advertising that inspires people to use these weapons, and that may have even inspired the shooter here to choose this particular rifle that he took to the school.
Could this potentially be a legal roadmap for others who might be looking to file similar claims?
It could be. I mean, and that's certainly one of the things Remington is worried about, and it argued in its papers to the Supreme Court. I mean, many states have broad consumer protection laws, like Connecticut's, that apply, across the board to different types of company activity, whether it's the sale of guns or otherwise. And what Remington argued is that what Congress really had in mind was a narrower exception that was talking only about state laws that were specific to gun sales, not these kind of broader, just general consumer laws here.
Well, you write that the U.S. Supreme Court's decision today sets no precedent. So what should we be taking away from it?
Well, I mean, I think what we should take away is, the court has a largely discretionary docket, so it can pick and choose what it wants to hear. And by staying out of this, and, this was their first opportunity to say one way or the other. Sometimes if the court's not sure, it'll hold on to a case for a few weeks to think about it more. And here we got an order right away saying we're not going to get involved. And I think it's fair to read into it, at least somewhat, that the court is not really eager to get into this area and flesh out, how far protections might go for gun makers. And obviously this was a high-profile tragic case, and this may in particular be one that it was not one they wanted to sort of open up here. I mean, the court hasn't taken much of any gun cases here over the past decade. We have one coming up soon, but it's not anything like this where you're talking about potential monetary liability for a mass shooting like this.
Certainly a lot of people that are paying very close attention to this case. Brent Kendall. Brent, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.